All right, hey everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. So we've been talking about this idea of variability and of spread, and if the previous definitions were kind of confusing, that's totally fine. We're gonna hopefully clear all that up with a nice example. So the example that I always think of when I think of differing spread is Chipotle. And so I know that most of you are familiar with Chipotle, but for those of you that are not, Chipotle is Mexican. I guess I'll put that in quotes. I'm not sure how authentic it actually is, but it's a kind of restaurant fast food cross where you go and you order, and then the people working there kind of stand in a line, and then they give you what you want, and you make a little bowl. So what I'm thinking about for this example is that our variable is going to be grams of sofritas in your bowl. Their sofritas or their vegetarian option, it is the best. I think of this example so much because Canton does not have a Chipotle, and I desperately wish they did. They'd make so much money being at a college-y town place. Anyway, this is how Chipotle, in my opinion, actually works. They operate under high variability for the amount of sofritas that you get. And that if I'm going to Chipotle and I'm going to make a little dot plot where the x-axis is going to be grams of sofritas. Oh, they're so good. And the y-axis is just going to be a count. I might go once, and this person, I'm just making up grams, maybe gives me 20 grams of sofritas. So I get a little dot there. Then I go again, and the second time I go, the person kind of sucks, and they give me 14 grams of sofritas. And then I go again, and I get 20. And then I go again, and this person does okay. They give me 16, and then I go again, and they give me 11. And maybe I'll go 2 more times because I love their sofritas, and maybe I get 16, and maybe, I don't know, a 13. All right, so we're going to compare the variability of this setup, which I hate, with how I wish Chipotle would operate. With some sort of serving cup mechanism that I wish they would just have. I don't understand why they don't have it. I just want the same amount of sofritas every time. And so under this hypothetical way that I wish they would operate, if I go to Chipotle once, maybe they give me 16 grams, and then I go again and they give me that same amount because they're using a serving cup, and then I go again and maybe they overflow the serving cup, so I get 17, and then I go again and go back to 16, and then I go again and maybe this person that doesn't know what they're doing underfills it and gives me 15, and we'll say I go 2 more times, 16 and 17. All right, so that's all this idea of variability is. These values are more spread out than these values. So now I'm hoping we can kind of make the connection to what the standard deviation is. So it's thought of as this typical deviation of an observation from the mean. I'm going to guess that the mean is about here for this example. And so we see that the typical deviation in this left graph is larger than the typical deviation in this right graph, which is kind of small. And so that's why this graph is going to have the higher standard deviation, because the values are more spread out and the deviations are typically larger. this one's going to have the smaller standard deviation. So all that standard deviation does is condensing kind of this more abstract notion of variability down to a single number. Because remember, it has this specific calculation where we're finding the deviations, we're adding them all up, after squaring them, we're dividing, then we're taking the square root. So it just condenses this down to one single standard deviation, and then this is going to have one standard deviation, where the graph on the left is going to have a larger one. Okay, so hopefully that kind of makes this notion of variability clear. It is something that we'll deal with throughout the entire semester, so if something's not really clear about it, definitely let me know. Our other measure of variability is the IQR. And so instead of the standard deviation, we could use this metric, which stands for the inner quartile range. And so this has a nice simple calculation. All it is the third quartile minus the first quartile. All right, and so we'll see this IQR also play out in a rule for outliers, but hopefully we could kind of see from this above example that if the first quartile is around here-ish, and the third quartile is kind of up here, then Q3 minus Q1 is going to be a lot larger in that example than it is for the right example. So again, larger IQR means more variability. All right, so it's just another metric. We'll talk in a little bit about when you would want to use the standard deviation as a measure of spread or a measure of variability, and when you would want to use the IQR.